In view of the fact that the supply of money has an integral impact on the economy, key variables like income, prices, wages, employment, rate of interest, and balance of payments, we need to measure it precisely. For this, we will first have to settle on a theoretical definition of money. Only after that, we can identify empirically the things that serve as money in an economy. Then, the stock of monies of various kinds at a particular point of time can be computed. The question of an appropriate measure of money is widely debated, like which financial assets are to be included in the measure. Those theories which stress on the transaction motive of holding money favor a narrow measure, while those theories that treat money as an asset for a store of value emphasized on a broader measure of money. This makes money not a fixed entity but a question of preference and judgment. Money acts as a means of payment, a store of value, a unit of account, and is highly liquid with fixed nominal value. It may or may not be providing a rate of interest. As a matter of fact, different financial and real assets could be arranged in a descending order with reference to their liquidity. Currency and demand deposits are the most liquid assets as they are the medium of exchange. Time deposits and government bonds are liquid assets but cannot be converted into the medium of exchange without incurring some cost. At the bottom of the liquidity continuum lie automobiles, real estates, etc., which can be liquidated at a short notice only at a substantial cost. Accordingly, several measures of money are thus possible, each successively dropping a point lower on the liquidity scale in differentiating between money and all other assets. There is thus no unique definition of money. For policy purposes, it could be defined as the set of liquid financial assets, the variations in the stock of which could have an impact on aggregate economic activity. In view of the above inconsistency associated with the proper measure of money, monetary authorities all over the world provide alternate measures of money, leaving the choice to specific situations. The classification of monetary aggregates used by most central banks is based either on the functional characteristics of monetary assets or the institutional distinction between banks and other financial intermediaries. Innovations in banking practices and products are likely to affect the efficacy of the aggregates. As a statistical construct, money should reflect assets with monetary characteristics and specific liquid liabilities of a particular set of financial intermediaries.
After studying this module, you will be able to learn about issues in the measurement of money, particularly with reference to India, know how to define the components of money stock in India, identify the monetary aggregates as they have evolved over the years and the reasons for changes, evaluate the difference between simple sum and weighted money aggregates. To approach the issue of measurement of money, you need to first settle on a theoretical definition of money. Say the functional definition of money, which says money is that asset which performs the functions of money. We now identify those assets that perform the functions of money and empirically measure them. An aggregation of all such assets would give us the computation of the stock of money at a point of time. We can have various empirical definitions of money depending on which property of money we give importance to. Thus, assets which serve as a medium of exchange would come under a narrow definition, while those that serve as a store of value and a unit of account would be included in a broader definition. Earning a rate of interest could be another criterion. For example, cash earns no rate of interest, but time deposits do. So they would be in different measures of money. Similarly, assets are liquid in various degrees and would therefore be included in different measures of money, like cash is perfectly liquid, time deposits less liquid, and real estate least liquid. We can therefore have different definitions of money depending on which characteristic we stress on. The money supply in India always refers to its stock held by the public at a point of time. Public includes all economic units like households, firms, institutions, or local authorities, non-bank financial intermediaries, and non-departmental public sector undertakings which demand money. Public includes foreign central banks and the government along with the IMF who keep a part of Indian money in India in the form of other deposits of the RBI. They are all demanders of Indian money. The suppliers of money are the banking system consisting of the RBI and all banks accepting demand deposits along with the central and state government. For monetary analysis, it is essential to separate the demanders from the suppliers of money.
At the outset, two things need to be noted before we discuss any measure of money supply. First is the supply of money refers to its stock at any point of time. Second, the stock of money always refers to the stock of money held by the public, where public includes all economic units, that is, households, firms, institutions, all local authorities, non-bank financial institutions, non-departmental public sector undertakings, foreign central banks, and government. They are all the demanders or holders of money and are separated from the producers or suppliers of money like the banking system, RBI and all banks which accept demand deposits DD and the government, central government and state governments. Such a separation of suppliers and demanders of money is essential for monetary analysis and policy formulation.
We now discuss the components of money stock in India and first take up the narrow definition of money, which includes those assets that serve as a medium of exchange. These could be identified as currency C, demand deposits DD, and other deposits of the RBI OD. We will take up the first component, currency. It includes two components, the rupee 1 paper notes and small denomination metallic coins, both of which are a liability of the Government of India. Currency also includes notes of denomination 2 and above, which are a liability of the RBI.
In India, currency consists of paper currency notes as well as coins. Paper currency is in the form of Reserve Bank of India currency notes of the denomination of rupees 2 and above, rupee 5, 10, 20, 50, 100, 500 and 1000. They are liability of the Reserve Bank of India. In addition, there are small amounts of Government of India rupee 1 notes and coins along with metallic coins of a smaller denomination. They are direct monetary liability of the Government of India. However, they are put into circulation by the RBI as an agent of the central government. The RBI does this by holding stocks of government currency on hand and by maintaining full convertibility of this currency into the rest of the country's currency and vice versa. They, along with currency notes, are however not convertible into assets like gold or silver.
We now come to the second component of the narrow money stock in India, namely deposits. The institutions supplying these deposits can be banks, non-bank financial intermediaries, or post offices. The current account deposits are payable on demand and checkable, and hence can serve as a medium of exchange even though the holder does not earn a rate of interest. They are usually held for convenience in payments by businessmen. The fixed and recurring deposits are neither checkable nor transferable but earn a rate of interest. Saving account deposits have the property that some part of it is checkable and can be used for transaction purposes, but the remaining earns a rate of interest. Post office deposits can be of various types, saving, fixed, and recurring, and hence are liquid in various degrees. But post office saving deposits are usually withdrawable not through checks but withdrawal slips, and neither a large amount can be withdrawn without prior notice, nor can the withdrawal facility be used too often. The other deposits of the RBI are its third component of the narrow money stock. It consists of deposits made by the other members of public, like foreign central banks and the government, along with the IMF, all of whom are the demanders of Indian money. Other deposits are a small proportion of the money stock in India. Unlike the classification of deposits by banks into current, saving, and fixed deposits, the RBI classifies all deposits into two, namely demand deposits and time deposits, on the following basis. Demand deposits are deposits which are withdrawable on demand and transferable by checks. This automatically qualifies current account deposits and that portion of saving account deposits which is actually withdrawn as being classified under demand deposits. Time deposits are deposits which are not checkable or which earn a rate of interest. This qualifies fixed and recurring deposits and that portion of saving deposits which earn a rate of interest as being classified under time deposits. The RBI has so far constituted three working groups for the determination of monetary aggregates of that period. The first working group was constituted in 1961 and had a single measure of money stock consisting of currency and demand deposits, emphasizing the role of money as a liquid asset as well as a medium of exchange. Later, by 1967-68, it came out with a broader set of monetary aggregates that included time deposits as near money. This aggregate was called aggregate monetary resources, consisting of currency plus demand deposits plus time deposits. From April 1977, four measures of money supply were published, which ranked assets in varying decreasing degree of liquidity, with an extended institutional coverage of post offices and cooperative, particularly after nationalization of banks. By 1969, the nationalization of banks took place and the depository corporations like banks became important, and hence demand and time deposits held by the public in these institutions came to be included in the monetary aggregates. The Post Office Organization issued saving and time deposits, and these deposits were included in the monetary aggregates M2 and M4. These aggregates were ranked in decreasing order of liquidity, with M1 being most liquid and M4 least liquid. Demand deposits were the net demand liabilities of both scheduled and non scheduled commercial banks, as well as that of cooperative banks.
Apart from depository corporations like commercial and cooperative banks, there are development financial institutions and non-bank financial corporations performing intermediary functions. There was a blurring of distinctions in the operations among these institutions. It is for this reason that the second working group, monetary aggregates, M1 to M2, were not progressive in terms of liquidity. There was delay in the receipt of information from the non-scheduled segment of the commercial banks and the cooperative sector, as also the post offices, which affected and delayed the monthly flow of data, rendering M2 and M4 less significant for policy purposes. As a result, only M1 and M3 were being used. These postal deposits issued by post offices could not be included in a monetary aggregate because the postal department is a part of the general government and hence the producers of money. With banks now investing in domestic debt and equity instruments and foreign assets, their returns are affected by fluctuations in interest rates and exchange rates. However, there is no mechanism for this change in valuations. There is a need to make the methodology of compilations according to international standards consistent with the UN system of accounts. With deregulation, non-bank, non-government share in total financial assets have been increasing, as also their intermediating liabilities. Hence, the share of non-depository corporations have been increasing. This has to be incorporated in broader liquidity measures, which would be empirically related to overall economic activity.
There were a lot of changes that had taken place in the Indian economy by 1998 that necessitate the RBI constituting the third working group on monetary aggregates under the chairmanship of Dr. Y.V. Reddy. Instead of only currency and demand deposits as financial assets, With financial innovations, there was an array of financial assets like commercial papers, certificates of deposits, and foreign securities. The interest rates which were administered earlier became free and market determined. Undeveloped financial markets became developed. Instead of restricted external transactions, banks started investing in foreign securities, domestic equity, and debt instruments, which meant that their returns were affected by fluctuations in interest rates and exchange rates. There was delay in the receipt of information from the non-scheduled segment of commercial banks and cooperative banks, as well as post offices, which meant that the monetary aggregates M2 and M4 of the second working group monetary aggregates could not be computed in time. Only the depository corporations, like commercial and cooperative banks, were the major financial intermediaries. Post-liberalization, the share of non-bank, non-depository corporations like development financial institutions and non-bank financial corporations has been increasing, which affected the efficacy of the second working group monetary aggregates. These are incorporated in a broader set of liquidity aggregates by the third working group. Postal deposits would no longer be a part of monetary aggregates since post offices are a part of the government and hence a part of the suppliers of money. They are a part of liquidity aggregates. With banks investing in debt and equity instruments and foreign securities, their returns were affected by fluctuations in interest rates and exchange rates. Let us understand the sectorization of economy. The first and the second working group has divided the economy into three sectors: the private or the commercial sector consisting of the foreign sector and the rest of the domestic sector, including public non-government sector undertakings, the banking sector, the government sector. The third working group divided the economy into five sectors, namely households, non-financial commercial sector, general government, the financial corporation sector consisting of the banking sector, and the other financial corporation sector. The fifth sector is the rest of the world sector. Residency relates to the country in which the holder has a center of economic interest. The non-resident Indians hold their deposits in India in two forms: A. NRI rupee deposits, and B. The NRI repatriable foreign currency deposits, FCNR-B deposits. While the second working group had included both in their monetary aggregates, the third working group included only the rupee deposits because they had an impact on the domestic activity. The FCNRB deposits are excluded from the third working group monetary aggregates because they are a monetary liability and are more important for balance of payment considerations and international capital flows.
A major differentiation made by the third working group, financial aggregates, was between monetary aggregates and liquidity aggregates, not on the basis of the attributes of the instruments themselves, as on the nature and functions of institutions issuing such instruments. The monetary aggregates considers only the liabilities of depository corporations, which includes following institutions: A. RBI, B. Banking system consisting of first SBI and its subsidiaries, then nationalized banks, then regional rural banks, and commercial banks in private sector and foreign banks, and lastly the cooperative banks. However, over time, the share of non-depository corporations in total financial assets has been growing. Their liabilities are good substitutes for broad money and are empirically related to overall economic activity or prices. Therefore, in a broader concept of liquidity, total assets held by the public that are issued by all financial intermediaries, both banks as well as non-bank, should be included. Some of the assets suggested by the third working group are post office deposits, public deposits, term borrowings, and certificate of deposits of financial institutions, public deposits with non-banking financial corporations. Some countries included commercial papers and treasury bills too in liquidity aggregates. However, they are not used in India because they are not held by the public. However, the following instruments like call terms funding from non-bank financial institutions could be included in monetary aggregates. Hence, particular exclusions would be foreign currency fixed deposits by non-residents, FCNRB deposits as well as money market mutual funds, which could be classified under non-depository financial corporations. But because of balance sheet restrictions on their funding, they are included neither in monetary nor liquidity aggregates. The third working group differentiated monetary aggregates from other financial aggregates not with respect to their attributes, but with respect to the nature and functioning of the institutions which supply these assets. The basic distinctions between monetary aggregates and liquidity aggregates is that the former includes the monetary liabilities of RBI and the banking system, that is, of depository corporations, while the latter includes financial liabilities of non-depository financial corporations such as development financial institutions, DFIs, and non-banking financial corporations, accepting deposits from the public apart from post office saving banks. Even though financial institutions may issue financial assets similar to bank deposits, we cannot treat them as money unless the financial institutions are similar to banks in services. Such assets should be included in liquidity measures. The third working group published 4 monetary aggregates on the basis of the banking sector balance sheet in norms of progressive liquidity, and 3 liquidity aggregates and 1 financial sector survey. M0 monetary base, M1 narrow money, M2 and M3 broad money.
The monetary aggregates considers the liability of the depository corporations, which includes the following institutions: RBI, SBI and its subsidiaries, nationalized banks, and RRBs, along with commercial banks in the private sector, and foreign banks and the cooperative banks. Let us discuss the reasons for need for liquidity aggregates. The share of non-depository corporations in total assets was growing, and their liabilities were good substitutes for broad money and related to overall level of economic activity. In a broader liquidity measure, the total assets held by the public should be included, whether issued by banks or non-banks. Some examples of these could be post office deposits, public deposits with NBFC, term borrowings, and certificates of deposits of financial institutions, all competing with the liabilities of the banking sector. Let us now discuss the basic distinction between the monetary and liquidity aggregates. The difference between them is not on the basis of the attributes of the instruments, but on the nature and functioning of the institutions supplying those instruments. The monetary aggregates include the monetary liabilities of the depository corporations like the RBI and the banking system, while the liquidity aggregates include the liabilities of non-depository financial corporations like development financial institutions, post office saving banks, and non-bank financial corporation accepting deposits from the public. The monetary aggregates are the liabilities of the depository corporations. M0 is the monetary base or the reserve money or H compiled from the balance sheet of the RBI. M1 is the non-interest bearing liabilities of the banking sector and is the same as N1 in the second working group. M2 reflects the transaction balance of entities and is relatively interest sensitive. It includes the entire saving deposits because they are held by households for transaction purposes and rules with respect to number of checks or withdrawals are not followed. It includes short-term deposits of less than 1 year as these are held for liquidity considerations and portfolio management. It is notable here that because of the residency criterion, FCNRB deposits are excluded from the monetary aggregates. M3 has been redefined to reflect additionally the call funding of the banking system by other financial institutions. It includes term deposits with maturity of more than 1 year and also excludes the FCNRB deposits. The liquidity aggregates include the liabilities of non-depository financial corporations like post offices, term lending, and refinancing institutions. These institutions issue liabilities which may be similar to those issued by banks, but their functioning is different from those of the depository corporations, the liabilities of whom are included in the monetary aggregates. The post office deposits, which were a part of monetary aggregates in the second working group, are in the third working group a part of liquidity aggregates since they are a part of the government.
An alternative is the weighted monetary aggregates, which give weights to the moneyness of an asset. These weights reflect value shares and are derived from the interest return on the component, vis-a-vis a benchmark instrument held purely for investment earnings. By this logic, C and DD have largest weight because they have no rate of interest. Higher liquidity and low interest are also given larger weights in comparison with instruments with higher interest. Criticism of weighted monetary aggregates is that weights depend on choice of benchmark instrument and assumes a normal relationship between short-term and long-term rates of interest, which may not hold in practice. Also, liquidity being inversely related to the rate of interest on a financial instrument is eroded by financial innovations. Weighted monetary aggregates also, however, have conceptual and empirical problems, particularly in the institutional setting of developing and emerging market economies. That is, in India, there is deficiencies of operationalization rather than conceptualization.
The monetary aggregates discussed so far were simple sum monetary aggregates because they assumed perfect substitutability among its components, say between C and DD in M1 by implicitly assigning equal weights to all the components. This is consistent with economic theory. The weighted monetary aggregates give weights to the moneyness of an asset. These weights reflect value shares and are derived from the interest return on the component vis-a-vis a benchmark instrument held purely for investment earnings. The simple sum aggregates are theoretically inferior to weighted monetary aggregates, but the latter are difficult to construct operationally, especially in the emerging market economies. Weighted monetary aggregates depend on the weight of the benchmark instrument and assumes a normal relationship between long-term and short-term interest rates, which is difficult in practice.
In this module, we discussed some of the issues in the measurement of money in an economy. We need to have a theoretical construct before we measure the money stock. Since money has various characteristics like its functions, its liquidity, its absence of returns on it, etc. There is no unique definition of money. It depends on what we would like to stress upon. The supply of money refers to its stock held at a point of time by the public, where public refers to all economic units demanding money. It excludes the suppliers of money like the banking system and the government. Financial innovations in the financial system like introduction of new financial assets, importance of non-depository financial corporations, freeing of markets and interest rates have necessitated changes in monetary aggregates. The third working group gave monetary and liquidity aggregates that reflected these changes. The aggregates discussed so far were simple sum aggregates, which are theoretically inferior to weighted monetary aggregates, but are operationally difficult to construct because choice of weights is not easy, particularly in developing economies.